Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Thin Digital Line podcast. This is episode 2 that we are shooting with Vishal Amin. I'm actually recording this separately because once Vishal sat down with Jeff and I, we just started talking from riding bulls to war stories to juggling and freestyle rapping that we actually wanted to keep in the podcast. So I hope you guys enjoy the listen.
And I'll tell you right now, I thought it was the biggest bull. It was the meanest one there. I got on there. I was shaking. My left hand was there. It was roped in, and they're getting it all ready to go, and I was just shaking. And my buddy was like, "You need to calm down." And I did it, and I fell off right away. And I did it. Well, it was a couple seconds. I think it was 8 seconds, right?
Yeah.
It was at least 8.
I'm sure.
It was at least 8 seconds.
It counts.
And,
That's a ride.
Could you hold on with two? Was it just one? You had to do the full.
It's one hand.
It's one
you have
hand.
to do the full thing.
Yeah, you can't hold on both
Yeah,
hands.
you'll
That's not
hurt-
bullriding.
I
You'll
would
hurt yourself.
100% hold with both. No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You'll
That's
hurt
a-
yourself.
That's a fault.
So I've got an
Obsessive.
8mm tape video recording of it.
Yeah.
I've watched it twice, ever. I refuse to watch it again because the bull. I'm pretty sure it has something to do with the filmography of it. It's the bull looks a lot smaller than I remember in the video. But I've got some other ones that are better. But that was my first one, and it's tucked away right there at home in the most secretive place in the home where only the few can see it. But yes, I did ride bulls, and then I got into the country culture and all of that. I went to a big agriculture school.
Okay.
So we had Arabian horses and all of that. So, and I didn't think we were going to talk about this today.
Yeah, this
at
is
all,
hilarious.
But that's what my love for
It's not funny. It's just interesting.
my love for boots and my love for all my country stuff. So
Yeah.
And my wife's from Iowa, and when she didn't know I wore boots and my hat.
Yeah.
You're a
all of that.
California burrito.
I've got my before Labor Day hat, my after Labor Day hat, right?
There you
all
go.
of that, and then
It's everything you need.
it's all.
I'm one of those guys that, if you look at me, you have no idea what I might have done. But, freestyle rapping, like West Coast gangster rap, I got you. No.
Are you from Long Beach?
No, I'm not.
No.
I'm not from Long Beach. No, I was born in Oakdale.
I know you said that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you freestyle rapping?
Yeah.
I've known you now for a little bit, and that is still not anything.
You should.
Is that one of those that we think that you're good at, but we're not?
No. You can talk to the other people who were in Asheville. They witnessed it.
That is so funny.
Yeah. I can break dance, juggle, many talents.
I know you could juggle. I heard that on the podcast.
Yes. Yeah. And I had to prove it. Nobody believes that.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's the thing you don't believe. Like.
Yeah, we'll lean into the more serious stuff, I'm sure, later, but I think diversity is a big piece of everything we do now.
Yeah.
100%.
It's huge.
I'm the type of guy that, like, I don't like there to be anything I don't know how to do. I don't want to be that good at anything, but I got to
Yes.
to Kuwait in my first deployment, and it was one of those things, like, we were in a Marine task force that was doing weapons of mass destruction reconnaissance. That was our function, right? So
Which task force were you in?
CJTFCM.
Okay.
So, Combined Joint Task Force Consequence
Does that mean
Management.
something to you?
Yeah, well, I'm a Marine,
Yeah.
so I'm
So it
sorry
does.
that you had to associate yourself with us crayon eaters for a little bit. but
Yeah, it was. We were the only Army elements in a Marine task force. It was interesting.
We're a special breed of people.
Y'all are a special breed.
That you are. But that was my first deployment. Yeah, I was 18 year olds, PV2 at the time, and I got there and I was like, so we're just gonna sit here and wait for Saddam to shoot the Scuds? Like, what is there to do at this place? You can only do PMCS, which is basically preventative maintenance checks and services, which is what you'd never do on your car, Carmen. Like, she takes her car in like once every 5 years.
Carmen,
and
I don't think
what
you
is
need
this
a
thing?
car
I
here.
literally just spent $2,000.
I don't think you
on
need a
getting
car in
repairs.
Nashville.
She's like, is that light still working up there? Yeah.
Right.
Like, yeah, no, it's definitely not. So you can only do so much PMCS on these. Like I had these 19-ton chemical reconnaissance vehicles. Like we were fully encapsulated, air conditioning, the whole thing. And we'd train and like, all right. So I decided I was going to become the best ping pong player in Camp Doha, Kuwait. And I'd never played ping pong before. So by the end of that deployment, I was the best ping pong player in Camp Doha. And now I can play ping pong and rock it, and I never do it. It's like one of those things, like, jumping out of an airplane or whatever. It's like, yeah, no, I do that all the time. Like riding a motorcycle when we went to Baja. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm a proficient rider. I do this regularly.
You learn a lot in the service. We were sharing a story outside without going into the boring details of it, and I don't come from a military background. I'm the same way. If you look at me, I don't look like I did what I probably think I did in the service.
How did they describe you? They described you as what, an F-18 driver?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a weird way of phrasing it, but okay.
Yeah. I was a Wizzo in the Hornet, and it was, and I got, when you go to flight school, I went through a unique time where they're trying to figure out, all right, let's train you to be a pilot. Let's figure out where you need to go. My grades weren't good enough in the first place in college to even fly, but I ended up in both, right, in the seats, and I ended up at the end of my career in the back. This was later in my career, right? This was the second half of my career because I was enlisted the first half, and I somehow got to flight school, and I went through the primary, and I went through all of that and learned how to fly and did all of that. Ended up in the backseat of a Hornet at the end of my career, towards the end of my career, and did all types of different things. But you would never know that I was in this. Well, at the time, it was worth a lot more than it is now. I would say $70 million, $80 million aircraft.
Yeah.
Where a majority of my family are doctors, professionals. My brother's a scientist, right? I mean, it's insane. But the diversity that you see in folks, you would never know what they do and why they do it. So yeah, I did do that for a little bit, and now I don't do any of that anymore. Oh, so the story I was sharing outside, it's similar because I hadn't touched a weapon my whole life until I joined the Marine Corps.
Really?
Ever.
That was your first time holding a gun?
My first time holding a weapon. And
what a culture shock.
I guess it was a little bit of a culture shock, but you know what you're doing and going and learning and doing all of that. And I was the worst shot. We used to call them double pizza boxes, right? We used to get the little medals with like expert, sharpshooter, marksman, and I'd always get the marksman, the box, right? They'd call it the double pizza box. I thought it was cool that I got to wear two pizza boxes. Most people just got the rifle. I got the rifle and the pistol pizza box. It was great, right? You got the personal pan and you got the large, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But it's funny, the repetition kicked in, and when I got to be part of some of the more elite communities, it just became natural, and that changed over time. The pizza boxes became other things.
Yeah.
Right.
But you kept the pizza boxes.
Gourmet pizza boxes at that point, right? And later in my career, when I got to work with some of the same organizations that you got to work with and had the privilege to work alongside, I think I was a lot older in my career, and my body didn't work the same way as I thought it was going to at that point. A lot of people say, well, were you right there, kicking doors down? I was like, no, I'm not. I wasn't that guy. I was standing behind them, and I was standing behind them and helping them, and my body wasn't working the same. But I didn't have pizza boxes anymore because I was practicing those things day after day. So we're talking about it, and I got out and I hadn't shot for a couple years. And I got into the private sector, and we went to this event, and I was like, I don't want to shoot. I'm not a big conventional shooting guy anymore, right? I do it once in a while. I enjoy it. It's takes some concentration for me, and takes a little bit of the edge off sometimes, right? And I think in terms of being able to focus and do it as a sport. And I went there and I hadn't done it in a while, and someone looked at me and they said, "You're teaching me how to hold it and teaching me how to shoot it." And I think it was more luck than skill. I hadn't done it for 2.5 years, but I mean, it kicks in.
Yeah.
And we were doing a 25, 15, and 7 meter shot, and I think I was hitting black, the outskirts of the black, but I was hitting the black, right? Because it's science.
Yeah.
And they looked at me and they're like, "Have you shot before?" And I said, "Just for 21 years." Like, "What did you do?" But I said, "I don't know, nothing important. Don't worry about it," right? So to your point, nobody knows what you do, you know? And I think that's fair, but
I think there's also a beauty too, in because I'm an activities person. I'm not good at any one thing, but I'm fine across the board at a bunch of different stuff.
It's like the Jedi flu, the F-18.
That's
Jack of all trades, master of none. Yeah.
Yes, no, that's it. I'm master of none, but I have all the activities. But I love it because Doug, he was trying to get in my car, and I had to move. You know, I had my crash bag, and I had this longboard, I had my tennis racket, I had my yoga thing. He was like, "How many activities do you do?"
Wow.
I was like, "I love it because I get comfortable failing, and you're continuously learning at stuff."
Yeah.
And I think there's a
She
character.
She
to
does
that.
all the activities except for work. See what I have to do? I got to feed her whiskey in order to get her to do the podcast.
This is my
Podcast,
first.
yes.
This is my first podcast with whiskey.
Yeah.
So I thank you.
Necessity.
As far as
Thank
anybody
you.
knows, it is after hours, not at all during the business day.
No.
In the middle of the week. So, yeah, when it happens to get aired, I mean, it's not like we're doing this live. So,
That's true.
It is after hours.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
It
Well,
is 5 o'clock
thank you
somewhere.
thank you for having me here today.
No.
It's so great to see both of you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so let's go back to intros. We can
yeah, we're only
we
like
can,
20
we
minutes
can
in.
switch this.
I can
switch
do this
back,
all night. This
though.
is fun.
Intro.
No,
Yeah.
This is
right?
fun.
It
I
is
don't
fun.
get these are fun podcasts. It's,
Yeah,
you know,
just hanging out.
Great.
Yeah,
I
so
love
we will. So this is the Digital Line podcast, as we've already kind of started. We got Jeff Engle here, Vishal Amin, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, and you are the head of security for Microsoft Federal.
Right. I had all of our security solutions for Microsoft Federal and now Microsoft Federal Defense.
Yeah.
Is that another subsidiary?
So we're not talking about our licensing at Microsoft.
Okay.
Right? So Microsoft Federal has grown. So to really make an impact on our customers, we really wanted to differentiate our different teams. So when I came over a few years ago to start growing the federal defense security business, we had an amazing set of individuals, and we're too small to cover 11 different businesses in federal.
Right.
So we split the business up into intelligence, or intel business, our federal civilian business, and our federal defense business. So we hired leaders. So we split my team up and our teams up into those three different, I guess you could say, subsidiaries of Microsoft Federal. And we put brilliant folks in all three. And then eventually we started transitioning some of the portions of the business over to other leaders on how they want to uniquely grow the business.
Right.
I opted to, I was over there at Federal Civilian for quite some time, and we found an amazing leader to take that role. And I would say the leader of Federal Civilian, Missy Jordan, found an amazing leader. His name's Reese. You met Reese. You've met Reese. He's so great. Came from GitHub, and he got brought over to lead that part of the business. Ernie leads the intelligence part of the business. Comes from that space, same world as you and I come from.
Yeah.
And I came over to Federal Civilian, and another amazing leader, Wes Anderson and Julie Kapp, lead that business over there for all of federal defense. And we have a huge revenue stake and impact stake, right, for Microsoft Federal in general. So I love being able to impact our customers from that side of the house. And I'd like to think we do things and we act differently in terms of the normal Microsoft in a good way. So we are part of Microsoft Federal, federal defense in general, but that was just a change as of this last July.
Cool.
So
Cool. Yeah, it's we've known each other for a long time, and Conquest's version 2, like what we call it, really got its roots in DoD Microsoft, for one of the customers that we came in and helped with.
Right.
And then, it's progressed from there. I was reflecting on, I just hit 6 years in the ecosystem that I'm in, with a little over 4 years in my position, and to see how far things have progressed on both sides, and obviously watching you as you came into Microsoft and you made so much progress, and really your career tracks with us, in our engagement really interestingly. But that's not why we're here.
It's been great working with Conquest over the last 4 years. I'll share that.
No.
And I'll also say one of the things that I loved about, we're doing intros, so one of the things I love about what you guys do and what you do and what your team does is, I share this with my leaders often. It's not about managing expectations. It's not about managing people. It's leading. It's being a leader. It's setting an example. And I think when businesses grow that way, when people grow that way, you can make more impact, right? Instead of babysitting, empowering others to do more and make impact for more. And I think you could see that in the growth of Conquest, even in your customer base and what you're doing. So we appreciate the partnership. It's truly amazing.
Feeling is mutual. I'm glad to seen your progression, and really starting to see a lot of dots connect that with some of your peers and counterparts and in different functions.
Right.
That we've worked with in the past, and now you kind of coming together as a cohesive team where you're like, hey, do you know? I know. Yes, I know Jeff too. And that it's all it all ends up coming together, and that's both of us having come from the community. All you have is the reputation that you build, right? It's really easy to lose. It's really hard to build that trust,
right?
And I think the fact that we are able to do what we're doing and be where we're at, comes down to just the alignment between what we say and what we do.
Yeah, I would say it also has a lot to do with the sense of service.
Yeah.
I share with my team 5 words that we lead by there, and they're 5 words that were echoed by a gentleman named Travis Manion. Mm-hmm. And Travis Manion gave his life years ago, and I'll let everyone look him up and look his story up, but he left a legacy of 5 words, which were, if not me, then who?
Yeah.
And his sister, now the head of the Travis Manion Foundation, Ryan Manion, shares those words and does a lot of work behind that in all the organizations she's with. But we lead our team with those words. And on top of what you said, what those words mean to us is a sense of service, a sense of selflessness, a sense of responsibility to be part of something greater. Yeah. And I think that's what differentiates us versus a business, a commercial business, a revenue-facing business, right? You have to have a sense of service and purpose, whether it's giving back to your country or giving back to your family or something. You have to have a sense of purpose to excel what you feel you need to excel or accomplish what you want to accomplish. So I would add that to what you shared.
Yeah, it's all about having something that's worth fighting for, right?
Yes.
Something that's worth progressing towards. It's funny that you mentioned the Travis Manion, and that's beyond the Microsoft and the fact that we worked together. That was the one degree of separation. So a friend of mine, this guy named Aloysius Boyle, goes by Ish.
It's your choice.
He is a very smart guy, also a Marine, and he was on the board of the Travis Manion Foundation when I met him, and something that he was really passionate about.
How have we never connected that dot?
Yeah.
We have. I think we did connect this dot. We did connect this dot. Yes.
I always knew it, but I don't think you had ever met Ish.
No. And you just reminded me of it right now. I mean, there's so many. It's a small community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was, the passion that people have, and always having something that's worth, building towards, fighting for, mobilizing for. That's really what this this podcast, this conversation, the ecosystem that we operate in and we build is all about. We were talking about it before we started filming. But when it comes down to it, you have to, once you take care of yourself, it's about what you can give to everyone else. And nobody goes down in history as being impactful because of all the things they had. It always comes down to what did they give.
Yeah.
And I see that reflected in what you do. When I'm tracking you on LinkedIn, in addition to just being friends, it seems like every opportunity there is for you to make a bigger impact than you could as a person, you're taking that opportunity.
I'll share something though. I'm really bad at finding value personally, but in terms of all those things that I try to involve myself in. But one of the things I love doing is trying to connect dots. Mm-hmm. So when you see those things, those are dots connected, right? I think we all make impact in our own unique ways. I was speaking to someone today, and I was sharing with her. She said, I'm seeing what you're doing. You're speaking here. You're doing this. We're growing as a security company. How do I get involved in that scene? I said, it's not a scene. I was like, find something that you're emotionally connected to.
Yeah.
And be vulnerable about it.
Yeah.
And if you can tap into that, you're going to create impact to a new group of individuals that you have never even known ever existed.
Yeah.
And that's the key. And being able to highlight those points of intersection, those points of impact, that in my mind is the most important thing. I feel very lucky to be able to do that at Microsoft Federal. What we get to do impacting national security, and national security is not a small topic. It's a huge topic.
Yeah.
But to be able to share that it's not just national security that we're empowered to affect and drive. It has a lot of cross similarities to diversity, to inclusion of different folks from different parts of life. Yeah. Has a lot of correlation to a sense of service.
Yeah.
And what we're talking about right now. And for me, that sense of service, we're not talking about serving in the military. That sense of a higher calling. Yeah. Whether it's a spiritual higher calling, whether it's a family higher calling, whether it's anything, right? Tapping into that allows us to connect the dots, and that's what you see there. Yeah, right, is us connecting the dots.
Yeah, it's what you're called. The way I frame it, I call it the Lord's work. Right?
I love that,
and it's not necessarily oriented to religion. It comes down to the Lord's work is what you are called to do. So most people will talk about, the alignment between what you say and what you do determines who you are. And from my perspective, especially having, spent some time under other identities, it came down to, I could say it and I could align my activities towards it. But what endures is who you are, because it's reflected throughout what you say and what you do over time. And some of the relationships that we've had and others, I haven't talked to some of these people in 15 years, and when you reconnect with them, it fits, because there is no lack of alignment. It's who you were as a person. You still are. It's just how you are putting that into action today. Is it aligned or not aligned with what they know and what they expect? Yeah. So that sense of service, I think, goes deeper. That there are some people who've identified that that's a part of who they are, and there are other people that I've been lucky enough to draw to our mission that never realized that was something that was missing.
I love I was sitting outside of our podcast headquarters here today.
The brick wall. I feel like we're like.
And it seemed like there was some core mission words outside of the wall out there.
Delta values.
Your values, yeah. Well, teeing stuff
Yeah.
up too. I knew what they are.
Yeah.
Right, because I saw them and I recognized them, but they're, mission seems like it's very well intertwined within the fabric of Conquest, which is pretty amazing. You don't see that in many organizations. It's a differentiator,
Yeah.
for sure.
Because it's become very cliche.
Yeah.
Mission has become very cliche.
It
I think
has.
It's in the podcast we had with Gerard.
I look at mission a lot differently than I think most people do, and this is coming from my own personal view. I think we confuse the word mission with when we start associating it with revenue.
Yeah.
We confuse the impact of what mission actually is, what it represents, the culture that it drives.
Yeah. It's funny. For us, I'm a big proponent of building frameworks, and I use those as to allow for mental models to be established where if I'm not there, everybody knows if you follow this framework, you're going to make the same decision that I would make. And with us as a business, I start with mission. And our mission is cyber resiliency for the sector is critical to our way of life. So DHS made it easy for us. They said these are the 16. And then there are the 46 national critical functions like elections and other things.
Right.
That's who we do it for. Cyber resiliency is what we do. If it is required for that, then yes. Like, do you do this? Is it aligned with mission? Yes. And then it goes to business. Like, can I explain this to the board of directors and the shareholders why we did this? And that gets into go to market versus ROI, but it's always secondary.
Sure.
And then it gets down to user experience. So you were a Marine. I guess you never stopped being a Marine, right?
That's correct. I'm not going to correct you on your podcast, Jeff, but I am a Marine.
Yes.
Right.
And that status as a Marine, right, always is part of who you are.
Correct.
And part of being a Marine is that if it doesn't suck, then it's not good, right?
Sure.
Right? They're like,
right.
The Army's like the soft Marines, right? And the Air Force, they're even softer. But user experience is third because the mission is so important, right, that it has to be primary. And as long as it's mission aligned, if I can explain it to the people who ultimately are enabling us to do it,
right, then
it's a yes. And making it to where it's easy is the third consideration. And it's not last. It's just we rarely get past that. So from a decision-making process and a framework standpoint, it's mission, business, user experience.
Let me not. Well, I don't think I'm challenging this. Let me add a little bit to the conversation and shift us a little bit.
I would like if you would challenge it, actually. I love when people challenge Jeff.
Her argument is her love language.
Yeah, I love it. I love watching arguments. I love.
Well, I mean, I appreciate the invitation here, but it would, let me challenge this a little bit and maybe add to it. Maybe you agree with this wholeheartedly. I grew up in the military with that mindset of mission first, mission accomplishment first, and I think that is a true sentiment. And we have to accomplish a mission. We have to believe in that mission. There's a differentiator in terms of serving to do what someone tells you to do, and then believing in your mission, and then doing what you're being told to do in support of that mission. I think I want to shift the conversation away from user experience to maybe user impact.
Yeah.
And my backstory, I can share a little bit of it here if you don't mind.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
So I grew up as an enlisted Marine. I'll skip the rest of the background. We'll hear it in another forum somewhere else. And I commissioned and made my way to the aviation community. A lot of failure, a lot of learning. Went through that aviation community over time. Went into the special operations community, and was involved with some Marine task forces and some other Joint Special Operations Command organizations. And I was privileged to be able to help with some efforts. Some did well, some fell on their face. And as an organization, we failed the mission. And mission always came first. In my career, 21 years, mission always came first. I always looked at the mission and looked at the benefits and the needs of the greater nation. When we start talking about nation state actors in the cyber realm, we talk about the importance of them and how we need to prioritize nation state actors and how they impact us. In the military, the conflicts we were in, the missions that we were part of, they came first. And that was missing the birth of your kids. That was canceling a wedding. That was being away from home. That was all of that. And fast forward a couple years and a lot of events. And on March 21st of 2015, all over the news and the media, we found out that I was named one of the top 100 people to be killed by ISIS. And all of a sudden in my mind, user experience
was priority.
Trumped mission. Yeah. So, but there's a lot that we can even talk about after that and what has happened since and what we do now and what you and I get to do together now as partners in the professional realm between Microsoft Federal and Conquest, but even personally what we can do to empower our communities. Yeah. But let's put that aside. And philosophically, let's talk about that. Didn't even cross my mind that was a possibility when I was trying to achieve a mission, accomplish a mission. Yeah. And I think that's a fundamental change that we have to start thinking about is mission accomplishment is great. It's amazing. We need to do that. We need to trust our leaders to accomplish a mission. But unless I had the hindsight of what was going to happen in life after, the user impact up front, and was able to balance my decisions off of that, that would have changed the way I accomplished that mission. Yeah. That would have changed the way we approached it. That would have changed the way we interacted with, let's call them the end users of that mission. Right? So putting that into perspective, it wasn't mission first, people, and what's that quote?
It's mission first, people always.
Yeah, mission first. Yeah, I know. I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. That's the Army quote.
But I knew you were going to say that. But I was going to say the quote from A Few Good Men, right? Core.
You remember? I don't. Yeah. I'm not a Marine, so I don't.
Yeah. Core, God, country, right? Yeah. Family, somewhere in the bottom. But all of that being said, if I would have had that perspective of the end user and the impact and the emotional impact of that mission when I was making the decision, that would have changed the narrative.
Yeah. So I think this is actually perfect because actually the reason that you're here is for a Thin Digital Line launch. And I think that ties in perfectly because it is how can we educate others so you have that transparency
and context
so to be able to make those very important and impactful decisions at an earlier phase than what we've learned, later on down the line.
Yeah. And the words we use are important, right? So even the words in the mission of resiliency, right? So we build, people do security, right? Security is a thing. IT operations is a piece of that's typically separated. There's GRC, risk management, compliance standards, all of that. There's all these disparate things that are happening, right? And all these dots are intended to be connected, and they aren't, right? And decision makers aren't empowered with the context and transparency they need to be able to connect those dots and make informed decisions based on risk. Right. But risk happens at a lot of levels, the systems, networks, data users, right? You can do risk management with those. There's something you care about, some bad guy or hazard, right? And then a mechanism for that bad guy or hazard to impact what you care about. Resiliency gets past that and says, if the mission is resiliency, it's about the function that this is providing to our way of life. It's the, whether or not you're actually doing that business function, you're providing power, you're protecting, the populace, you're able to, respond in emergencies, you're able to deliver clean water. And if it's not clean, you can tell people, right? That's resiliency. So that mission of you just have to protect this, or you just have to act on this, it typically lacks that broader context that might change your decision, or it may just change the emotional state upon which you execute that decision, or it may impact the number of other factors. And the way that it's been operated, when I came into this, and I tell former unit members all the time, is I'm like on this big recruiting push for special operators. Let's get into cyber. And they're like,
I love that, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. They add so much value in there. And the first thing they say, because these are all guys that are like, no, I got sent on no-fail missions and I don't know how to do this. And then I start talking to them about risk. And their level of understanding of risk is so much significantly different than traditional, people who grew up in just a pure technology view, because for them it was real. Like, you bring the wrong batteries, somebody dies. Your understanding of what is needed in order to understand and control and then actively manage risk is so much different as a baseline.
You know what you just did, though, that we don't do as a community? And this is different. When you talk about risk in SecOps, you're talking about data. What are you talking about right now? You're talking about humans.
Yeah.
You're talking about actual life. You're talking about actual time of living value. We don't do that enough. We don't do that at all in most of this community. So I apologize for falling short there, but I wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
Is as a community, as a security, compliance, identity community, we don't talk about the human effect and mitigating risk on that vulnerable, transparent level.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's funny, if you dig into my background beyond being a world-class ping pong player,
and juggler.
Yeah. I'm an emergency manager, right? And there's really no translation for what the government spent so much money training me to do. But just because it doesn't translate into something that's commonly known doesn't mean that there isn't translatable skills. So when I think about the fact that, Christmas Eve, a bomb went off and E911 went out completely in the Nashville area, that to me is part of our mission. That's an emergency services completely went down in Nashville because somebody decided they should put a data center right on the road. And you can easily identify this is a data center right on the road. And some Yahoo filled his camper with explosives and blows it up, taking out that data center and ultimately taking down E911. If you take that individual event, there are individuals and families that are impacted by their decision about where to put it. The fact that it was easily identifiable of where that data center was, and the fact that we weren't proactively looking for indicators of threats that had the capability and intent to impact that asset. You take that in isolation and say, nation states, our geopolitical adversaries, if they wanted to do something in a coordinated way, how many Yahoos with campers full of explosives would they need in order to undermine our entire way of life? It's not that many. No. But it's also not the way that people think about these things. It's not just clicking on a phishing link. It's the holistic approach to our ecosystem that relies on over 400,000 organizations. And I'll tell you, Cybercom, NSA are not going to protect 400,000 organizations from nation state level adversaries.
I think so. I think those organizations within the federal government, they have their missions,
Yep.
and they have their place, and they have their priorities, and they are sound.
Mm-hmm.
They're amazing. And one of the things that I had an opportunity a few weeks ago to speak with Mr. Frederick at Defense Talks. And we sat down and we spoke about their mission and their priorities. And one of the things that rang loud and clear is our ability and our need and our necessity to come together and collaborate more transparently.
Yeah.
I share with my teams an old aviation mantra, and it's aviate, navigate, and communicate.
Yep.
Keep the aircraft afloat, right? Keep it flying. Let's not fall out of the sky. Let's point to the direction that we've decided is best, that is going to provide for safe harbor, safe landing. But lastly, let's collaborate and communicate with transparency.
Yeah.
And that last part is, I think, the key. When we talk about NSA, especially when they validate a lot of our best practices and help us defend against the highest threats that we see and the most significant threats we see in the nation, we talk about U.S. Cybercom and their work with a single part of elections, which is just one aspect of a national security initiative that even Conquest Cyber has worked on in the past. And they are defending at that level. They're helping us at that level, but they need us to collaborate more.
Yep.
They need us to communicate more. And it is almost a necessity. So leaning into maybe what you're sharing is collaboration is key to where we are headed in the future. It's not a single platform. It's not a single product. It's not a single approach. You have to be holistic in the way we look at security.
It's about everybody doing their part and doing it within reason. One of the frustrations I have is, the cybersecurity vendor community, like it's driven towards creating a niche solution that solves a very minute problem. So they could potentially, get enough customers and then get bought up by some larger, cybersecurity platform company, and then eventually get rolled into a larger stack. Because if you do too much, then, you can't be trusted. It's too complex. VCs and private equity, they're not going to fund that. So it's driven towards these niche solutions that are poorly integrated, poorly deployed, right? Don't have an ecosystem of support. And you see RSAs and the Black Hats and all of these conferences, just like massive amounts of marketing money. They're just inundating the cyber defenders with flashy lights and this will solve all your problems. And then you have the reality of these two guys that are trying to defend this network of tens of thousands of nodes, and they don't even have a good list of what's on their network because the help desk just issues stuff, right? We could throw, the best intelligence from the most advanced capabilities in the US at these two guys, and we could give them all the tools in the world, and we do. We can give, DHS gives them, hey, any resources that you need, except it comes down to it. There's still two guys trying to do the job of 52 people.
And that's not going anywhere,
No.
right? We reviewed it right before just to make sure I had my numbers right, but we're looking at by 2025, 3.5 million unfilled cyber security jobs. And we're just talking about backfilling those two guys.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're not talking about strategists.
They've got a job description out there for an intern to come in and help them. Yeah. So that's literally what we're looking at when it comes to these roles. And we've done the analysis, and there's some other research that's been out there. And it's basically, it takes around 52 people in a general enterprise organization. It takes about 52 people, 18 months to build a program that's compliant. Not a mature program.
Or an effective program.
Not effective and provably effective against a nation state adversary, just compliance. And nobody is making that investment. Nobody's hiring 52 people for an organization and saying all your job is security, because on average that's $10 million worth of G&A.
I think that goes into your initiative though, right? Is in that realm, we're talking about product.
Mm-hmm.
In that realm, we're talking about maybe more managed services, security services. And I think product and managed security services are essential in that realm. Yep. But with that being said, you also have to be able to act at the individual level.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about SecOps. We're not talking about our operators in the SOC. We're talking about basics.
Yeah.
Right. We're talking about enabling multi-factor authentication. We're talking about understanding your risk profile from a human level. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the mom, the sister, the brother, the husband, the wife in the home and their Wi-Fi networks and how they're managing the risk there.
Yeah.
We're extending beyond the product and the services, and I think sounds like that is the initiatives that we're referring to with the new conquest.
Yeah.
Movement.
Within Digital Line, it's all about, not obscuring the reality that we're facing. We're not going to mass produce 3.5 million qualified people. We're not going to. It just isn't, it's not a realistic objective to just throw bodies at the problem. Yeah, there's some special operations forces truths, right?
Right.
Yeah, you can't build capability after an emergency has occurred, right? And competent capability cannot be mass produced. So I think we as a community need to stop making the problem more challenging, right? And start addressing it where it sits, which is you have two guys, and those two guys, they're completely overwhelmed. They can't deal with another tool. The tools they have are probably not properly configured, managed, monitored. But the biggest problem they have is they are not in a position to be able to take a step back beyond their tasks and start thinking and understanding how to communicate in a way that lets their leadership get the transparency and context needed for them to say, this investment needs to be more significant.
Yeah, there's an absolute truth to that. One of what you just said, what resonated to me the most, reminds me of something we shared we had a partner and customer summit last month. You were part of it, mm-hmm. And we did a visit to Miramar, and we were talking to the executive officer there, who I know from years past. And I asked him to share a few words and share with you why this resonates. We sat the whole team down in the ready room, and someone asked him a question about, well, how do you scale one F-18 in the operations area? How do you scale 4 500-pound bombs, right? 20 mic, a pod. How do you scale all that? You have 2 people in the cockpit, and you have this grandiose mission. How do you scale that? And he said a couple things. He said, number one, we have the Air Force, we have the Navy, we have the civilians, we have all types of folks there. We have to reach outside of our branch and our sphere of influence to create the impact that we need as a community. We do different things. We do the same things, but we have to find ways to partner. If you look at that in the world of cybersecurity, I'll lean on Microsoft because that's the world I live in right now. And we made a conscious decision this last year. Let's open up our platform. Let's partner with technology partners, with integrators, with managed service partners, with professional service partners that have different initiatives. We have to open up the way we partner, how we partner, and come together as a community. That's number one. The second thing, though, which hits the nail on the head, is how do you communicate these partnerships and these initiatives and what we need to do to leadership? And he said something very profound that I thought was very normal. And I didn't even think twice about it because it's ingrained. And I think you'll think about it the same. He said, we debrief and we brief and we communicate effectively. But when you jump in the cockpit, when you jump in the briefing room, and he said something specific to the cockpit, he said, in the cockpit, there is no rank in the cockpit. You are Jeff. I'm Vishal. You're not lieutenant colonel, colonel, general, lieutenant, first lieutenant, whatever. There is no rank in the cockpit. And I think that spoke to a few folks on my team, one in particular that I'm speaking about, that mentioned it to me. And what it showed me was when you take away the idea that you're reporting to someone, you are shoving data to someone, you are giving them information to reporting up, you're breeding a culture of rank.
Yeah.
But if you take that rank off and you are in there with them, you understand them threat hunting, the way they're interacting with customers, the challenges that they have, and it's just you and me in a room, then you're empathetic to the way they're doing things. You're empathetic to the human, the emotion, and you're able to get things done faster. And between taking the rank off in the cockpit, in the SOC, in the ready room, and opening yourself up to collaboration and partnering, we can get a lot more done as a community. So sorry, I did pause what you said, but it reminded me of that because those two elements of what we learned from our warfighters, really resonated with folks on my team that have never been in those situations. And they're so true.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason that XO and that leadership team at Miramar said it was, guess what? They're not talking about revenue. They weren't talking about product. They were talking about life.
Yeah.
They were talking about the human in that cockpit, right?
Yeah. It goes through, there's an element of context and perspective. And then there's an element of expertise. And I think the thing that's missing is that you get a focus in the cybersecurity community after bad things have happened. And you're never going to be able to respond well if you haven't properly prepared for those bad things to happen. So if we could get alignment and realize that we're all part of this same ecosystem, part of the same kind of thin digital line, and whether you're a SOC analyst or an IT guy or a GRC professional or a CFO or a CEO or, an elected official, that how well you do and how much you trust the people to your left and right ultimately determines the outcome, because bad things are happening and more bad things are coming. So if you accept that, you're in the cockpit together.
I love that.
You're in the trenches, you're on the front line, and I think the change, when I think about it from a nation state, a geopolitics, a national security perspective, it's, the front line has moved from this kind of conceptual thing that's, in Iraq or Afghanistan or, on the beaches of Normandy, or now it's literally on your front porch.
But not a lot of people feel that. And I love that you've brought up emotion so much in this, because I think, from an outsider, I don't have a cybersecurity background, but coming into this world and trying to get people, to understand the gravity of it, a lot of people don't have an emotional attachment with it. And if you're not emotional, if there's not a bigger purpose, if you can't get passionate about it, you're not going to grow it, right? On the outside and the level, like the home base that it needs to hit for people. No. And that's what we've seen an issue with, and that's what we're trying to create, but it's not an easy job.
There's a great example in the 501c3 and the philanthropy community. Most of these organizations now that are starting are cloud-based, cloud-focused, cloud-founded, without understanding that they are founded in the cloud. It's a reality, and I smile because I love it, but they're so mission focused and they're very emotional in a good way. mission. They're very mission focused. And then you go and share with them, hey, I need you to enable two-factor, or I like to say multi-factor authentication. And you get, why? I've got a password. I'm safe. This is making it harder for me to do my work. And what they're talking about is it's making them harder to connect to their workflow, which is in that space, emotion, it's passion. And you see it a lot there, right? So I get that. And it's the same thing if I was at home and saying, we need to enable multi-factor authentication on our interwebs shopping accounts. Whoa. You're making it hard for me to one click right now to go.
And they think it's to try and avoid the credit card bill.
Right. Well, maybe. I think it's probably more so for me than anyone else, right? Because I'm a clicker when I need to get anything. But with that being said, it's that sentiment is true. It's because you're emotionally connected to maybe what you want to purchase. You're emotionally connected to your mission.
Ways, you're right.
Yeah. Right.
The other thing that I think that is critical that people don't realize.
We're gonna have to wrap up because Vishal and I are gonna be late to dinner.
Oh yeah,
we can keep going though.
Yeah.
They don't.
So I'll leave it with this, and then we can wrap up.
I'll tell them to push back. I'm just telling them to push back the reservation 15 minutes.
Okay. What a lot of people don't realize is they can't understand why somebody would target them.
I resonate with that question.
So, you talked about a little bit about why you personally were identified and targeted. And I think about that because, the community I grew up in, and there's reasons why other people might want to identify and do harm to me and mine. But when you literally feel it down in your soul, all you're doing is trying to do good, and you've never seen the darkest sides of humanity, you can't make that connection that people would want to target and do you harm. And I think that's the biggest thing hitting our 501c3 community. And then it obviously permeates out to other, entities. If they're like, oh, we're not the Microsoft or Google or, DOD. Why would they come after us? But that mentality is what puts us at a, competitive disadvantage. And how do you tell somebody that is literally somebody who at their core, they just want to do good? There are people out there who just want to do harm to you and get them to act accordingly.
Well, I'm wearing a shirt that says do good today. I love that.
That's perfect.
It's, I know we don't have a lot of time, so let me try to squeeze some things in. As a community that wants to do more good and make more impact, and we have to find a way. And you mentioned, I said emotion a fair amount, and I kept saying I love this because there's a lot of things in this conversation I love that we're talking about. We don't speak about these types of things much in the security community. We have to find a way to emotionally connect with people. Yeah. And it's not something that we can just create a silver bullet for. Diversity and the inclusion of populations and demographics, and whether it's veterans or females or a certain gender or a racial demographic, we have to find ways to emotionally connect people in our industry to those communities.
Yeah.
And with that emotional attachment, we have to share the impact of how we are digitally transforming and how their way of life is ultimately put at stake or impacted by these nation state actors, by threats, by individuals trying to do harm.
Yeah.
And these individuals, and I think there's another aspect that you have to think about here. These individuals that are trying to do harm are also the same individuals that are doing it to support their own family. So what reach would you go through to protect and feed and put food on the table for your family? These are the attackers. These are the nation state actors that are acting against you, not just to do physical, digital, malicious harm and bad to you, but they're going to go through the extent to make sure that they get done what they need to get done so that they can put food on the table for their families.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to, if you can connect, think about that. Like I'm thinking about it right now. That's how I feel about my family. What would I do to put food on you have to be able to connect people to that.
Yeah.
You know, to make that impact and to change the world. And I think we have to do that as a community, you know. And one of the questions we didn't get to today, which we'll talk about later, is how do we do that better?
Yeah.
Right. From Microsoft to Conquest. How do we share that connect, as Brene Brown says, that connective tissue, right? To do that.
Yeah. It's something that I talk about a lot, is the perspective of special operators is not, you know, people that are standing there on the top of a mountain waving a flag, you know, slamming beers and talking about how the enemy is, you know, some evil doer. It's largely from a position of respect, because in order to really understand and generate a competitive advantage, you have to understand the adversary. And there's a respect that's garnered by understanding what motivates them, why they do what they do. And I think you hit on something that I'd like to close out with. It's essentially, there were two things that I think make America America. One is an accident. It's our geographical position on the earth. We're, you know, on our east and west, we're surrounded by massive oceans. On our north and south, we're surrounded by friendlies. So geopolitically, we are positioned well to be able to take care of ourselves and then project power where we need to in order to help our friends and allies, which I think has been potentially one of the biggest advantages we've experienced over our history. But the other one is that diversity, the fact that we are a melting pot. We're a country of immigrants and revolutionaries that have come together, and we extract the best talent, the best aspects of so many different cultures, and we are able to harness it under a common framework that allows us to make more progress more rapidly and become a beacon for freedom-loving people all around the world. And with cyber, we lost one of those. We lost the advantage of where we sit on the earth. The fact that we have massive oceans on our east and west coast, it became irrelevant. And friendlies on our north and south, it's irrelevant. But what still is relevant is our ability to harness that diversity, and the fact that freedom-loving people want to come here. They want to put their talents towards it. And in fact, those adversaries that currently are sitting potentially on the other side of the world trying to feed their family by hacking our systems, those are the same people we would pull into our ecosystem and extract their talents, give them a good life, bring them into the fold, and then use that to generate a competitive advantage. That's what we do.
That's the essence of diversity in cyber.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I don't have anything to add there, Jeff. That was so awesome. And I want to say thank you for having me here today. This has been so much fun, and love being here. And we really do appreciate your partnership and your friendship.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I look forward to all the amazing things that Conquest and you are going to do in this community in the future.
No, I appreciate you.
And currently.
Same. And even though I ran out of whiskey, on toast to you for coming, for joining us, and for being here as we launch Thin Digital Line.
Yeah, most out of all of us. Come on, Vishal.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Yes, thank you for being here. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
We'll have to have you back on.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe we'll get to some other things in the future. We get really down in those those
bull riding.
foxholes.
Bull riding.
Yeah.
That's gonna.
There you go.
I'm
We
gonna
get the
walk
bull
away
riding.
with bull riding.
Okay.
Good deal.
Well, thank you again.
Oh, my pleasure. All right.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for listening. We will see you on the next episode.